Okay, welcome everybody. My name's Alison Pello, and this is about our 8th, maybe 9th webinar we've been running, which is all about back to business and helping you, your teams and your employees get back into the workplace in the most confident manner that you can help them. I've been running People Vision for, actually, Joe, you know what, it's 20 years, and I can't believe it. We've made it 20 years. Through recessions and whatnot, so very proud of the business that I've set up. Jo will introduce herself in just a moment. I'm going to share the slides that we've got here. So we've got depression in the workplace, and that's what we're covering with Alison Pello and Jo Perruzza. Jo's been working with me for about 2 years. We ran. And also Frank, who's on the call, and also Jennifer are part of the team where we delivered sessions to the DWP on mental health. We've trained over 7,000 people in mental health, one day mental health. So we would love to have your feedback today. If you could post a review, you will get an email afterwards, which will give you the slides, the recording, because you just hearing me once is never enough, is it, Jo?
No, never.
Once is never enough. You need to hear it twice, or you can even share with your colleagues. And also we've got a little bit of a handout that we can give you as well. So if you could post reviews, and actually the last few sessions, people have been kind enough to stay behind and offer us just a quick video review. So it's just, hi, we enjoyed the session, and that just gives me a bit of marketing collateral to tell other people how much the session has been valuable. We're all here to help ourselves in business. So if you could stay behind and give us a review, we'd really, really appreciate it. We've got other events that are happening, and having difficult conversations virtually is our next one. And in fact, my client, Emma Rook from Perfettiva Mele, very exciting. They are Chupa Chups and Mentos, and another sweet that can't come to mind, but she's the HR manager there. She's going to help me deliver this session next week, and then we've got how to carry out a mental health audit, so that'll be Jo coming back, and then Jennifer, as she said, building resilience. But it would be great to know in the chat or afterwards any other events that you think that would be useful to you, and indeed if you'd like to be a speaker, we are always looking out for speakers. So where did this all start? Well, we just thought, what framework can we use to create some very useful workshops for people and organisations? We think that this roadmap, because it's not just Boris that can have a roadmap. No, People Vision's got a roadmap as well. So we thought these were the pillars of our roadmap: remembering personal development, offering mental health support, A for adapting to change, D, develop excellent management, M for managing work patterns, A for always communicating, and P for perfecting your mental health, perfecting your health and safety. So that's what, that's what our roadmap is. So I'm going to hand over to Jo now, and she's going to tell you that. Jo's just, if I'm not going fast enough with slides, you just let me know.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Alison. Good morning, everyone. Really nice to see you all. And it's really encouraging to have so many people on today and really interested in depression in the workplace. So my background was mental health nursing for 30 years, well, nearly 30 years. And I left to pursue my career in delivering mental health into the workplace, working with organisations and businesses, and that's how I met Alison. And as she said earlier, I was one of her associate trainers delivering to the DWP, and has since then gone on to work with other organisations, mainly in the Northwest, because that's where I'm based. However, I'm open to international invitations should anybody require that. So today is going to be looking at depression in the workplace. So, sorry, Alison. So it will be about 45 minutes. Please use the chat box as well to, put your thoughts in there, have conversations as well, and ask any questions. And we'll probably come back to those questions at the end if I don't get to pick them up during the presentation. So after the session, you'll be able to understand the mental and physical impact of depression, recognise the signs that an individual is battling with depression, talk compassionately with sufferers, and decide how best to help them with their specific circumstances. So we're going to start with the types of depression, and some people on here today, you may be already familiar with the different types of depression, others may not be. So you know, there are several types of depression. But before we start, I'm just going to actually read out a poem that I found by Ellie Lloyd on depression. And I kind of would like you to kind of think about the impact that depression does have on individuals. And it may be something that you've experienced yourself. I know I certainly have in my years, and or somebody else that you may know. So it arrived unexpectedly, no bad weather warning, no announcement. Today, Mom, you will experience severe turbulence. You will experience severe turbulence in your emotions. Aircraft crew are struggling to overcome the problem and resume normal function. So I think that really gives a really good description of how someone will experience depression. Alison, can you go back to the slides? Thank you. Thanks. So we have major depression, persistent depressive disorder, bipolar, seasonal affective disorder, psychotic depression, postpartum, which is postnatal depression, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, and situational depression. Now, when I talk about these, the ones that often are most common for people are major depression, bipolar, and situational depression. Situational depression often comes after a major life event change. So it could be after a bereavement, a loss of any type. It could be something that has really impacted you, a trauma. So it is a reaction to an event. Major depression, however, that is quite different, and that can be, you know, somebody may have major depression from quite a young age, and they have that depression throughout their life. They may have periods of time when they're in recovery, but they may also have other depressive episodes. And bipolar depression. So years ago, some people may be familiar with the term manic depression. That's what it was called a long time ago. And bipolar is when you have two extreme moods, from a low mood, a very, very low mood, to becoming extremely high in your mood and presentation. Seasonal affective disorder, known as SAD, often happens in the winter months for many people that really feel low and depressed when the weather changes and they don't have enough daylight. Psychotic depression is something that isn't as common, but it does happen for people, and they have an episode or periods of when they may have hallucinations, delusions, but they're also part of their depressive illness. Postpartum, postnatal depression, after having a baby, but actually somebody may have depression, you know, during their pregnancy, but actually the depression does increase and become worse postnatally. And premenstrual is during a woman's menstrual cycle.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Postpartum. So I know maybe this is a stupid question, but postpartum, that's just the female, is it? That's just the female who's had the baby? Or could a partner, whether they be female or male, you know, be experiencing that?
That's a really good question, actually, Alison. I don't think that's a stupid question at all. I think that men also have to having, you know, when they're new to being a new father, may experience episodes of depression. However, I think for females, it's particularly after having the baby. And the hormones are readjusting, and they are experiencing kind of challenges of being a new mum as well. But perhaps they've been predisposed to mental ill health prior to that as well. So what does depression look like? I think we all have an idea or an image of somebody that might be depressed and what it actually looks like. But so I was talking to somebody the other day, and he was telling me that he'd been diagnosed with depression. And when he got his diagnosis, he said, well, I was waiting to know what it looked like. And I just thought that was a really interesting comment for him to talk about. So we explored that a little bit. You know, so he said he imagined depressed people to look like the first image up there, somebody with his head in his hands. The guy on the swing looks quite confused and quite distant from people. But then also underneath, there's the guy at the bottom who looks extremely happy, looks like he's having a lot of fun. But I think his face might tell us that he's got other things going on as well. So depression can look like a number of things for different people. You know, people can manage very well with depression to put on a smile, to look like things are going well, but actually inside their experiences, their emotions, their thinking and their thoughts is very, very different. So I think that's always something to really bear in mind, particularly in the workplace, about what does depression look like? How does it present itself? What are some of the signs and symptoms, which we will come on to shortly, about depression? So I think it's just helpful to bear in mind that we are all unique, and with our mental health and our mental ill health, we're all going to experience different signs, symptoms, emotions, and also some physical symptoms as well. Thanks, Alison. So sadness versus depression, because often you might ask somebody, oh, how are you doing today? And they might say, oh, I feel really depressed. They might not sound depressed. They might not look like they're depressed, but perhaps they're feeling sad, which is an emotion. And depression is a mental illness that impacts one mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and behaviorally. So that takes in all of us as a human being. It encompasses all our well-being as an individual. Sadness is temporary. You know, you might have asked me that question in the morning, and actually, you know, as the day goes on, my mood improves and my sadness isn't as bad as what it was in the morning. However, for depression, like I said earlier on, depression can last many years. Sadness is a negative event in the present. It's usually something that's very current, that's happened recently. Depression has many factors that are complex and could have happened way back in the past, stemming back to and into childhood. Sadness is often visible. For example, crying is one element of sadness. Depression, often visible, with no correlation between intensity of the symptoms and how visible the symptoms are.
Can you unpick that a bit for us there, Jo?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so for example, I'm just give you an example for when I went through a period of depression. It's often easier to use that. I felt very detached emotionally, but would quite visibly be tearful. But I didn't know often what I was crying about. And that's because the intensity of my emotions was pushed down so low, but they had to come out. But the way that I expressed that was through crying. So it's about the intensity of how somebody feels might be displayed very different on the outside. Someone may feel suicidal and turn up to work appearing fine. So suicidal thoughts and ideation, so that's ideas around suicide, are often present with somebody that is experiencing depression. You know, I am aware that other people also have suicidal thoughts on a day-to-day basis and live with that themselves. However, with depression, it can be a very distinguishing feature, but they may turn up to work having had these thoughts or having these thoughts and not let you know that that's what's happening. So in terms of statistics, over 16% of adults show signs of depression. Of adults showing moderate of severe symptoms of depression by age group in England and Wales. So there you have 2019 to 2020, 16 to 39. I don't know what your thoughts are on these. You might want to pop something in the chat to see if you're quite surprised or not surprised, or you already knew these figures. So
yeah, I think definitely put stuff in the chat around this.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. Yeah. 16 to 39, so in 2019, 10.9%, now 31% from last year. 40 to 69, 10.3 to 13%, so 70 and over, 5% to 10.3%. So it'd be quite, that's from the Office of National Statistics. So have you popped anything in the chat? What are your thoughts on those figures, anybody?
I'll speak first and then I'll ask somebody else to maybe unmute themselves or put something on the chat. I mean, well, first of all, it's great. We got this from the BBC. It would have been more helpful, I think, if there was more granular, so 16 to 21 effectively, and then 21 to, so that's my first observation. But I mean, huge with the younger, relatively, the younger people. So yeah, people are saying, so Jessica says she's surprised at the large increase of 16 to 39. Is it due to COVID lockdown? COVID, young people being locked in, says Miriam. I mean, I would say so. Their lives were the most, so I don't mind saying I'm 52, you know, and I have got a 16-year-old who has struggled, you know, and so her friends, you know, that she was 15 last year and just got a little bit of freedom to go out and, you know, just in that little bit of the summer last year, and now then she's told again, and she had to have, as an example, last sort of winter term, so September to December, she had to have 2 sets of isolation at home, and she's an only child. I mean, imagine living with me, that's hard enough, but, you know, living just in the house and not having any contact. I think when they're alone, you know, if everyone's at school and they're alone, that's a really challenging time for a teenager. If they're all at home, it's slightly easier because they're all dealing with the same sort of thing. So Lisa says, I'm not surprised really. My son and daughter are they're 20 and their friends struggle with anxiety. I think this is more common for everyone historically, but today they talk about it more openly. I think that's a very good point. Yeah, I'm not surprised there's, I think it might be Roz, Tony B, because I recognise that name. I'm not surprised young people learn when they're together with others, and young people starting work also learn from being around others. Exactly. Being stuck at home, not seeing student friends, or being able to learn informally from colleagues, of course, is going to make people feel miserable. We're built to live in tribes, not meant to be alone. I mean, it'd be interesting to see if anyone in this knows anyone who was at university that was really struggling, you know, and had to go back into work, not into back, you know, back into their own little rooms, as it were, or were sent home. So Maria says, I've seen it in the motor industry affecting many younger people. The impact of lockdown has had a significant effect. I mean, Maria, and anyone, I suppose, what signs have you got? So Isabella says 16 to 39 is a huge population which has suffered with severe readjustments, and the idea of futures for school children, leavers, uni grads, and the first steps on their career ladder. Absolutely. Colin says, I'm not surprised with all these figures. 2 of my family members have been having a CBT in the last 12 months. Well, thanks for sharing that, Colin. Yeah, back to you, Jo.
Yeah, thanks for all your comments there. They're really helpful because, you know, that 16 to 39 age group, I think, have had a lot of major challenges for many different reasons, but particularly, like Alison was saying, you know, the university or your 16 to kind of 20-year-old, I think it would have been a really interesting figure to put up there, but I'm sure there is data out there that can give us that information. Thanks, Alison. So what to look for then? So we know that depression impacts us physically, mentally, spiritually, and behaviorally. So some of the physical symptoms, so some people actually may have more physical symptoms than emotional symptoms, and some, for other people, it might be the exact opposite way around. So some of the physical symptoms can be chronic pain, where people harbour chronic back pain or other unexplained aches and pains. And often with our emotions, when we hold on to our emotions and we don't perhaps know what's causing them or how to express them, our body does something with them which causes us pain. And when we have pain, that is telling us, hang on a minute, there's something wrong. Can you please give me some attention? So it's another way our body gets us to take notice, and particularly with physical health problems. Headaches, it may be someone experiences quite chronic headaches, as if everything in their mind is just kind of stuck and has come to a standstill. There's no thinking space, or sometimes people feel that their head is quite empty, that there's nothing in there at all. So that's kind of the detachment of the emotion. And stomach pains. So the reason that I've put, there are others, but the reason that I've put these up there are because these are the ones that people in the workplace will often call in sick with. So it's just something to kind of take notice of. So these are the more common ones that people will say, oh, so I've got a really bad headache today, I'm not coming in, or I've had a headache for a few days. But actually, you know, there may be other things going on for that individual. And it's the same with the back pain or other unexplained aches and pain, and stomach pain as well. Thanks, Alison. So other things to look for would be continuous low mood or sadness. So if you know your team really well and people that you work with, or in the workplace, that you will notice the changes in behaviour. And these are things that are really important to take notice of. So any change in behaviour, so continuous low mood, feeling hopeless and helpless, and having low self-esteem and low confidence as well. Thanks, Alison. Oh, you're on mute, Alison.
Oh dear, that's it. I just wanted to say, I think that's easier said than done, especially for those of us who are working remotely with people. So I just said to Maria in the chat, you know, well, how does she know? She said, you know, lots of people are suffering. And I was like, well, how do you know? So we can look, but what tips have people got? Maybe they can either unmute themselves or pop it on the chat as well. If you're working remotely with people, how can we check for some of these signs? What do people think there?
Good question.
Maria says people are talking about it in welfare meetings. Maria, do you mind? Yeah, do you mind just telling us about that?
Yeah. So it's not all, you know, it's not just with welfare meetings. Look, we tend to use Teams quite a bit with people, especially if where people are working remotely. But it's also through the fact that we've built up a good rapport with colleagues, so they know that they can come to us. You know, we have people like Ben, who we refer people to, which is a free service. We have Perkbox. But I've had a situation with one, and it tends to be the younger set more so. One young colleague who lost his mum, and then his partner then passed away as well. And he was having suicidal thoughts, and luckily his manager was quite close to seeing these signs, flagged it up to me, and I had conversations with him, and then he literally called the doctor there and then we had somebody on the phone doing a assessment, so a psychiatrist doing actually an evaluation, and he asked me to be in the room with him. So this is something that I feel people are being much more open about talking about with recognition in the news and, you know, everything at the moment. But I certainly, in all the years that I've done HR, I've certainly seen a dramatic increase in people with suicidal thoughts. Particularly, I know with lockdown, people are saying that actually they feel better coming into work.
Yeah,
their mind occupied and they've got people around them. So we just tend to keep a very close eye on individuals and have regular touch points with them. But it's definitely increased this year and a half.
Wow. So there's some comments on there. So interestingly, continuously checking with your colleagues. Chris says well-being calls. And it's interesting now, Chris, do you, if we might ask you to chat, Chris, or put it on there, you know, do you actually label it, you know, I'm going to have a well-being call, or do you just kind of just chit chat normally? You know, do you know what I mean? It's quite hard because somebody might think, oh, I'm gonna have if you have wellbeing calls for everybody, then cool. You know, so yeah. Chris,
mine is part of a weekly one-to-one call.
Right.
And during those weekly one-to-one calls, I discuss well-being. And we discuss many personal issues and work-related issues, of course. But there is an element of discussing the well-being of the individual. And I know my team very well now. It's been I've been dealing with my team for well over a year, so I kind of understand their nuances, and they come to me for various personal or work-related issues. So it's something I thoroughly enjoy. And I mean, given the lockdown situation we've all worked under, it's a relevant topic of conversation at the moment.
Chris, what sort of job do your people do?
We are search providers. So legal search provider.
Oh, right, yeah. Oh, you're in that gang. Yeah,
absolutely. The housing market, very busy at the moment.
Yeah, because the other set of people we haven't touched on today is people. Thanks so much, Chris.
Thank you.
The other group of people we haven't touched on is salespeople. So again, I think I was hearing from people who are used to going, or people who travel with their work, you know, people who are physically away from their home and their family or their housemates, whatever it might be. And so how those people who would normally carry out their business by going on the road, you know, and now that could have, you know, obviously been very stressful of old, just getting from A to B. But now they haven't got that opportunity. You know, you see it. I know maybe we think, oh, performers, you know, well, what sort of job have they got? But if you watch performers whose job and their adrenaline is about performing and getting the feedback, you know, that's also something they've become so used to. So salespeople can be a little bit like that. You know, they need that drug of people. So I think also that's something else to definitely consider.
Alison, there's just an interesting point from Julia that I'd like to kind of, which I think is really important, actually.
Yeah.
Because what she's put there is often people who are experiencing depression or mental health challenges will be reluctant to attend online meetings with their camera on, may not be engaged, may appear distracted or quiet in comparison to how you might remember them being. Julia, is that something that you've noticed more and more frequently as we've been, you know, doing the hybrid way of working? Hi, Julia. That was a really good comment. Thank you.
You need to unmute.
Hi. Yes, I also do mental health training as well, Joe, but I've been working with a number of clients, and many people have been struggling. So I've been doing quite a lot of well-being workshops and so on, especially during their company transition, because a lot of companies are changing their structure and what have you. So the psychological well-being is quite important. And what I have seen myself is, as a trainer, how now people are quite reluctant sometimes to turn their camera on, and they will give a variety of excuses as to why that might be. And I would have never have experienced it that much in the past. And I think managers are quite concerned about how to deal with it, because they don't want to infringe upon that person's privacy if they're at home and what have you. But certainly we found that people who are struggling, they do kind of like those one-to-one chats rather than sometimes the group conversations, and probably will stay online afterwards and maybe ask a few questions. But definitely we've noticed, and I think it is a sign that there might be something that is not quite right, especially if you've known them in the past and you've seen a big change in how they're presenting themselves, and they're making variety of excuses or not really want to get involved in any social settings and what have you, then it can be quite a giveaway. Not always. Some people don't like being on camera. No. Some people prefer, you know, kind of just talking on the telephone, for example. But often when there's a few telltale signs, then we've kind of found that that's the case.
Thank you, Julie, for sharing that. And I do think it's really important. It's certainly something I've come across, you know, as I've been kind of delivering training as well. But I think, you know, it's about checking what's actually going on for that person, because it may be, you know, they've got a whole pile of washing behind them and they ain't putting their camera on when they've got a whole heap of washing there, but it's how frequently it's happening. It's actually, you know, is there something going on at home? You know, are they perhaps kind of uncomfortable about having a camera zooming into the room that they're in? They may live in a studio that's really small. So, you know, there are many things that go on for people, which does have an impact on their mental health. So it's really important, It's about the checking in and asking, you know, how are you doing? Is everything going okay? I've noticed you've not had your camera on. Would you like to have a conversation over the phone? I'd really like to see you. You know, I've missed your face. Whatever it is that you can help to get that person to engage, it's really important that you try that. But thanks, Julia, that was really helpful. So the things to kind of look out for, you know, the feeling, the tearfulness and the emotion, and perhaps some people can feel quite sensitive as well. It may be that people talk about they feel guilty for perhaps for not getting work done if they're in work and they're not being as efficient as what they used to be, or they just have this overwhelming sense of guilt, feeling irritable and intolerant of others. I put my hand up to that. That was me. I was very irritable and intolerant of many things, but I wasn't aware of it. And I think this is the important thing, that often people, when they are feeling depressed, they can be unaware of their behaviour and how they are feeling. So it can be quite a shock when somebody tells you something like, Joe, you're extremely irritable. Me, really? But yeah, I was very irritable. No motivation or interest in things. So that again could go back to why someone has their camera off in a meeting, particularly, that, you know, they're lacking interest, they haven't got motivation, they feel very detached or not engaged with what's happening within the workplace, perhaps because they've not been there, or they've got other things going on. Finding it difficult to make decisions. So I think this is a really important one. If you've had somebody within your organisation that you know is confident in their skill of making decisions and stands firm by the decisions, and they're your go-to person for decision making, and all of a sudden that changes, then that is a warning that that person is potentially struggling with their mental health and not getting any enjoyment out of life. I can't remember what the word is. I'll find it before we leave, but there is a word for that, of just not enjoying anything in life at all. So people can be anxious and have worries, suicidal thoughts. There may be attempts at self-harm, or they may be self-harming. And, you know, it's very individual to, the responses are very individual to the person who's experiencing depression. Thanks, Alison. So what can you do in the workplace? So one thing which I think is really important, and I think people are getting so much better at this now, is asking open questions. And the other thing is listening to the answer. So some simple questions here are, how can I support you? What are you thinking? What does this feel like for you? What would you like me to talk or just listen? You know, they're 4 simple questions that can really help somebody feel connected, feel cared for, feel that you have their interest at heart. They're not intrusive, that you're just allowing that person with an open question rather than, you know, kind of coming up with solutions. Because often when we come up with solutions for people, they can often be the wrong ones as well. Thanks, Alison. And providing support. So how can senior management help with this? Learn to discuss it and be available. Consider creating a survey to find out if employees understand what resources are available and how to access them. So often what I hear are the organisations with amazing resources, but then when, you know, perhaps I've been delivering training to the staff, they don't know about them, or they've been told at induction, but actually, you know, they don't really know how to access them. Or sometimes they have to access the resource through a line management route. So that kind of doesn't leave employees feeling that they want to do that, because they might want just to go straight to the resource instead. Out of your comfort zone. What support are you offering, such as webinars, employee assistance programs? I didn't put mental health first aiders up there, so I apologise to that for those of us that are mental health first aiders, but they're another resource within your workplace. Thanks, Alison. So it's about listen more and speaking less. So really using your active listening skills and also using your observation skills and noticing the changes within someone's presentation. And according to the World Health Organization, depression will be the second leading cause of disease well, that was by last year, by 2020. So that's quite alarming. And as we've seen from the data on the previous slide, there's definitely an increase across all age groups as well. So we're going to have a look now at employee absenteeism. So absenteeism is a frequent lack of attendance at work without a valid cause. Absenteeism does not include the occasional no call or no show, or instances that can't be controlled, like illness or car trouble. So these are people that, you know, the abbreviation AWOL, that just go absent without leave. They just don't turn up for work. Presenteeism, or sickness presence, is the act of showing up for work without being particularly productive, generally because ill health prevents it. So often that is when somebody perhaps finds coming to work, they can come into work, more helpful than being at home, but actually they are quite emotionally detached, so they're not present even though they are in work. So then their productivity could deteriorate, you know, their social engagement might change as well through presenteeism. And leaveism, which is working whilst on annual leave or taking a day off to catch up on work. So this is becoming and has become increasingly more common during the pandemic. It's because people have worked much harder, they've had perhaps targets to reach in a shorter space of time, and they are on leave, but they're continuing to check their emails, which means that they're not getting a break or the space to think about themselves and their families or other things in life, or basically taking a day off to catch up on work.
I also think, though, people are ever hopeful that they'll be going to go on a holiday. So then they think they won't take their annual leave. And now here we are 15 months in or whatever it is, and they've accrued all this holiday. So first of all, a business can't sustain that either, because then all of a sudden the borders are open and everyone's not off on holiday. And then, I mean, so I just wondered if anyone's had any trouble with that managing people's holiday. Be interested to hear. Ros, maybe you could you put a question in here. How should HR send out the message that you are open to discuss mental health? Ros, I'm wondering.
Yeah, happy to talk about this. So I do leadership and career coaching, and over the years I've seen a number of clients who have, you know, very reluctantly opened up about the state of mental health in order to explain why they have, you know, maybe not been as productive as they could be. And, you know, they opened up because the manager seemed very opening and welcoming. How can I support you? Seemed to be there for them at the time. And they thought there was a connection there. They thought there was support there. But then later on down the line, they realized that, you know, somehow they were overlooked for promotion, or I don't know, responsibilities change or whatever, and there's this maybe, and what they're imagining, and there may be some truth in it, is actually I'm now perceived as not as resilient. And so we get a lot in the press about be resilient. These are the ways to be resilient. Never mind that we're trying to make everybody do more with less, you know, and the systems and structures might not be actually supportive. If somebody's doing 2 jobs instead of 1, it doesn't matter how resilient you are, you're still going to feel that pressure. But I know that some mental health is protected in law now. But I do still think there are a lot of people, particularly I'm 49, that sort of, you know, Gen X generation and above, who think this is suicide for my career if I actually fully explain what's totally going on with me, no matter how nice.
Do you think that's in a different way to if they had a kidney stone or whatever it might be?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Do you think that would be different if they had? Sorry, let me just do that. Do you think that's different than if they went to say to their manager, oh, I've got a kidney stone, or I've got a bunion, or I've got cancer?
Oh, that wouldn't be so much of a problem. It's the fact it's a mental health, and so much emphasis is now put on resilience, and the fact that your ability to be resilient, that's your responsibility to be resilient. So they feel this pressure that somehow they're supposed to be resilient no matter what's thrown at them. And if they can't cope, they take it personally. It's a shameful thing. And in order to get the support they need, that often requires a conversation with a line manager or HR or whatever. But it's, you know, I will be interested to see what happens post-pandemic, whether because line managers have been told, ask people how they really are. It's really important. It's important for engagement. It's important for retention. It's important for all good reasons. Whether actually we're going to see, a few months down the line, the wheat being separated from the chaff yet again because somebody's had a non-physical thing. And I am so interested in this point about people will call in sick with physical ailments. I'm thinking about one client in particular who had back pain, and we began a leadership coaching engagement. And mysteriously on LinkedIn, he wasn't answering my calls. I was sort of saying, look, I know he'd gone off sick. Do you want to commence with the leadership coaching? Hadn't heard from him. Then his work email bounced, checked on LinkedIn, and he's looking for a new job. And I'm just thinking, I wonder what's going on there. Did he really have mental health issues that were manifesting in back pain? What was the employer's attitude towards whether it was back pain or mental health? What was actually going on there? And I'll never know. But I do think there is a responsibility if HR are saying to line management, encourage your people to open up, that we don't suddenly backtrack on people and say, well, because you opened up, therefore we don't really think that you're quite the right material to hack it at the next level.
I think that's a really good point. It's a really good point. And in fact, thanks so much, Ros. I saw something on LinkedIn the other day that said about people who had complained of being discriminated against, and that had also backfired on them. So I think that's really, really good insight. I'm gonna say it's 11:42. It's been fantastic discussion. So we'll just go through some useful resources. Hey, Jo.
Yeah. So some useful resources there which you can all tap into. So there's the 5-minute meditation on there, the Hub of Hope, which is a great website to look at that goes with your postcode and will tell you all the services around mental health that are available by your postcode, which is really helpful, particularly for the hybrid working, people working at home, and you might be in the office but you're concerned about somebody in a different area. That's a really helpful app to look at. Mind do a lot of workplace mental health, and there's some other apps for your phone: Calm, Headspace, De-Stressify and Budify, and they will all help you with your kind of grounding meditation.
And Jo, I think what we'll try and do is go on holiday. See the people at the top left?
Yeah, I like the look of that.
Go on holiday with him.
Yeah, he looks nice.
Like that?
Yeah.
I haven't sort out my mental health. Okay. So just any questions, do please pop them in the chat. It's been fantastic to talk to you. Big emotional kiss from myself and Jo here. It's been absolutely lovely.